Shadows of the Sun by Jesus, by our very own Mark Fanjo. Mark Fan to be exact, but we all call him Fanjo. He's kind of like the Northern Irish version of Fabio, pre-Seagull collision. Quite a good looking dude, quite a talented dude, and a great singer. Christ, I wish I had his many talents. Just one of his talents would suffice. But he is going to be a guest on this podcast, as is Davey Hanna, and we've both had them on before. I've had them both on before, talking about Bigfoot and Brexit and stuff like that. But tonight we're going to be covering the European Union, the Goddard Tunnel, the possible satanic shadow government. I don't know, and neither do they. But we speculate and we get into some conspiracy and we have a lot of fun. And this time, no one fell down the stairs, no one puked, and no one slept in a garbage bag. So it's a win for everybody. And this podcast was supposed to happen a few months ago, and I still have the recording, and someday when we get rich and famous, I may release it as a B-side, kind of like years ago, before all of you millennials were even like a twinkle in your ma's eye. When a band sometimes would release a 12-inch extended, what do you call it? Like a 45, but with bonus content, they would have like an interview or something. They would stick something just wacky on there, and the fans would just gobble that stuff up. They loved it. So that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to maybe do a Patreon and have like lost episodes that didn't go so well and became shit shows because people got too drunk and stuff like that. So that's what this show is going to be about tonight. And like I say, Jesus, Banjo's former band, are providing all of the audio content for tonight. I'm not going with my usual intro. And you will notice that I don't really say much in this episode. It's 2 hours long. I don't really say much because, like Donnie in The Big Lebowski, I'm out of my element. And I am outgunned intellectually. So I'm not afraid to admit that. These guys, I don't know, they've done their homework and they know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So I don't know if it's good interviewing or not, but I decide to say as little as possible, let them speak and not interrupt with stupid damn questions, because I think that would have ruined it. And I did ask a lot of stupid damn questions, but they were all cut out. So I just let these guys ramble on and tell the story of the Goddard Tunnel, the shadow government, and there will be more to come with the whole Epstein thing coming out, which I think is linked. I think all of this stuff is linked. And I think it was one of my Facebook friends said, you might not believe in Satan, but they do. Enjoy.
A lot has happened since we last spoke, and we tried to do this podcast a while ago, but it turned into a shit show. And you have a dossier on
a dossier, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's dossier. That's the way it's pronounced.
You never spoke of le parlez-vous français?
I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't know if I'm Americanized or just stupid. But so what we wanted to talk about was the Goddard Tunnel. That was the whole topic of conversation the last time.
We were talking about occult activity in Switzerland.
Right.
That was sort of centered around CERN, but part of the wider picture to that, with regard to like what we thought might be evidence for an occult scenario, was the goings-on at the opening activities of the Gotthard Tunnel. So it wasn't really about the Gotthard Tunnel, it was more about general occult activity, sort of based around CERN and what a lot of people are saying, and whether or not there's any real basis to it, or whether or not it's potentially even true.
When did this take place, this ceremony?
Oh, the Gotthard Tunnel thing? Well, what it was is the Swiss government had paid for the longest train, an amazing feat of engineering, the longest train tunnel under mountains in the world. Goes through a Swiss mountain range. Don't ask me what that particular range is, but
the Alps.
This big long tunnel, and it was an engineering feat. So because it was such a huge European engineering feat, they had this opening ceremony, and it was attended by all the heads of sheds and dignitaries of the EU. Well, not all of them, but quite a lot. I mean, the Angela Merkel, the most important one, the German Chancellor, the Austrian Chancellor, the Italian Prime Minister, all the dackwabs who are in charge of Europe, sort of thing, But none of there wasn't anybody specific of particular note from the EU as such. So there wasn't like Jean-Claude Juncker or Tusk. None of them were there.
Right.
But actual heads of country, like I said, Germany's the biggest country in the EU, the biggest, most important economically country in the EU. So Angela Merkel was there. So the fact that she was there alone says a lot. But there was Austrian boyos and Italian boyos and lots of other boyos. And basically, the opening ceremony took a form of interpretive dance, and
interpretive dance is a real stretch. I mean, essentially, it was a ritual.
Okay. So before we go any further, I just want to people listening to this can go and look at this on YouTube and make their own minds up, and if they're educated enough to know what the hell is going on. But I watched this on YouTube, and I was stunned at how provocative and in your face it was. Now that's just coming from me as a person of that has an imagination. But
I mean, interpretive dance is all very well and good.
Right.
I mean, certainly, it's for people who will study interpretive dance at university and do things as provocatively as possible, knowing that they're never going to get a job in the real world.
Like underwater vagina ballet.
Yeah.
That kind of shit.
The symbolism in this was, I mean, I'm a cynic, I'm a skeptic, I'm a skeptic. Even I was scratching my head going, this isn't just simply hinting at the occult. This is making overt references to, certainly occult, as well as mythological and traditional folklore characters such as Krampus, who is a horned figure in Swiss mythology and folklore. But it was all about enslavement. It was all about the subversion of traditional norms, values, and rules. And what had this to do with a feat of engineering? In my view, absolutely bugger all. And so it was a completely, irrelevant, but yet still quite sinister performance. It had nothing to do with the opening of a tunnel.
Well, there were, when I looked into it, I'm looking to see whether or not I'd written down the details of the guy who actually created it, had talked. There's not much about it on the internet, but there is some stuff I haven't got written down here. Anyway, the guy who had written it said that a lot of it was based on local myth, as Mark said, with the Krampus and all the kind, but it wasn't really so much that he didn't specifically mention the Krampus, but apparently the local myth is that there's a bridge that goes between these particular two mountains, and in ancient times a myth came up that one lot of boyos from one village had been trying to get something across to the other village, and the devil that made an agreement with the devil that if he helped them with the bridge, that he would get the soul of the first twat that crossed the bridge, or something like that. And cut a long story short, they outwitted him by sending a goat across the bridge. So he went mad and was going to kill everybody, and somehow or something happened. They threw rocks at him or something, and they trapped him inside the mountain. So the old stories are that the devil was trapped inside that mountain because the locals outwitted him to make him a bridge. So that's the sort of underlying story, apparently, behind what they're saying. But I mean, when you look at what was going on, I mean, as was said, we're talking about the sort of wider picture of a cult in what appears to be a growing scenario and potentially in Switzerland. And when you see what goes on, I mean, the interpretive dance can be said, because it is, of course, interpretive. Anyone can say anything about it, but it seems, as Mark says, it seems quite clear. The first part, which was the first hour and a half, was inside the tunnel, and it seemed to be a lot about dancers on digging and stuff. We're obviously supposed to be representing to me, we're representing the workers of the engineering, and then this white-winged figure flies over the top of them, which could potentially be an angel, I don't know, and they trap this flying winged figure and chain it down, as if they caught God, or I don't know what it is. I'm not entirely sure exactly what they're getting at. That to me, it says, man's victory over God, and so then it goes up to outside, and Angela Merkel and all then go outside, and there's another hour and a half of the dance goes on then outside, and outside the scene is set with lots of dancers dressed in like workers' uniforms again, and behind them is a set of a huge screen, a circular screen sort of thing, and on that screen there's various images being portrayed which sort of feeds into what's going on with the dance, and there's lots of working things going on. And I cut a long story short, the workers all come up, on the screen there's like a mountain, and the workers are on ropes, and they're up breaking this mountain down, and they break through the mountain. And what do they find on the other side of the things? But the all-seeing eye, this big, huge, big eye suddenly appears on the screen, staring out at them, a singular eye and a circular. So then there's three scarabs comes down. I have no idea what the hell the scarabs are got to do with it.
Is that before or after the ritual beheadings?
Oh no, that's before. That's before. So then this eye looks out over them all, and then basically as these workers are all dancing, doing their dance around the side of the stage, comes these guys, not dancers, dressed as, I don't know, I'm going to say demons, but they're dressed as like monstery things, and they come up and they grab the workers down, and then this guy dances out at the front of them as a man goat, a walking goat, at the head of these demons. As Mark says, then there's appears to be ritual, you know what I mean, and dancing, of course, ritual beheadings. A woman comes out as a spirit, as a ghost, as a veils and all on her, and the goat man bucks her, and then behind them all on the screen.
Hold on, the goat man has sex with this spirit lady.
Well, dances sex, and he doesn't whop his knob out and give her one, but so then behind them on the screen, then suddenly comes into focus this huge big goat's head looking out at them all.
Jesus Christ.
So you watch it for yourself and make up your mind. It's interpretive dance. It could be maybe, well, obviously we're thinking one thing of it, and this guy who wrote it claims to be thinking something else. It's completely and utterly fucking as obvious. I mean, keeping in mind the occult, and if you were a Christian, you would believe that the devil's greatest thing is to deceive people and to put things. The best way to hide things is in plain sight.
Right.
So
where's the best place to hide a book? In a library. But here's a question, slight diversion. Let's go imagery. If you look at, the Krampus figure, which is essentially a goat-headed figure.
Who's Krampus now for our...
Krampus is essentially the anti-Santa Claus. In Nordic, and indeed, Krampus originated in Nordic countries. But then it basically moved to the Alps because essentially, there's similar sort of demographies, similar sort of terrain. But Krampus is the anti-Santa Claus. Krampus would visit, it's a horned figure who would visit naughty children at Christmas time or at the Yule time period and basically would abduct them. But Yeah, so Santa Claus gives gifts, St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, whatever.
Dutchman.
Krampus, yeah, kidnaps naughty children. So he's essentially he's the Antichrist only in.
He's like wee Willy Winky. Remember him? Wasn't wee Willy Winky like that? He would abduct you.
Wee Willy Winky runs through the town, upstairs, downstairs, in his nightgown.
Yeah.
Well, he was just a flasher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he was like John Jefferson.
Yeah, so it's like, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Jack burned off his fucking dick. But yeah,
okay.
Why are goats given such a bad rep?
I love goats. They're so peaceful.
You have the goat of Mendes, you know. You have
from The Devil Rides Out. Yeah.
And the Judas goat, you know, because whenever sheep and lambs are being taken to the slaughter, traditionally there would be a goat because goats are more obedient.
Yeah, they're very nice.
A goat would be trained to lead the lambs and the sheep into the slaughterhouse.
Oh, really?
The goat would get away because there's very little value for goat meat other than in Afro-Caribbean cuisine. And all the lambs and sheep would follow the goat straight into the hands of the slaughterhouse workers in the abattoir. Yeah, in the slaughterhouses. But in terms of politics, in terms of betrayal, the Judas goat is an interesting concept, well worth investigating.
So do you know where the actual term scapegoat comes from?
The sacrificial goat. Yeah, the scapegoat.
Well, it's not. So yeah, the scapegoat thing. I was listening to a thing the other day about the scapegoat and the history of scapegoat. I'm just really.
Or village or a community would.
Yeah. Throw off the cliff.
Load all their sins onto the goat, and then it would take the sacrifice. It would be the subject of the sacrifice.
Well, it would fuck it off a cliff. Apparently, that's what they would do. These Christian. I don't know if it was here or in Europe or whatever, but that's what the scapegoat was.
It's something that is prevalent in so many pre-Christian societies. They would sacrifice. Yeah, it's the sacrifice.
Okay, so is that the conclusion of the Goddard Tunnel analysis?
Well, yeah, the Goddard Tunnel was sort of secondary to the scenario, but really what as I said at the start, we were going to talk about a cult and how a cult was rumoured to be going on at CERN. And the other aspect of that was other potentially occulty things that are happening in Switzerland, because this is all going on in Switzerland, which is the only country, landlocked country in the EU that I'm aware of. I'm wrong, I don't think so. The only landlocked country in the main part of Western Europe, which is not actually part of the EU, sort of stands alone. But it is treated as a member of the EU because it has some sort of affiliation to them. But Switzerland isn't actually part of the EU.
It's weird. Like Germany didn't like.
Germany decided to respect that. I mean, there were very, very few places where anything was respected in the Second World War, or the First World War for that matter, and yet Switzerland have always stood apart and not been attacked or invaded. I mean, the Folks Guard is the Swiss Guard. There's something like Switzerland. I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? But I mean, even way back, even Roman times, now I couldn't find part of the CERN stuff was talked about. Was that way back it was the town of, let's see, where are we supposed to be? The town which CERN is, or city maybe is a better way of putting it, that CERN is closest to. Town of, San Gianni-Puli, Genus-Puli if you're in Northern Ireland, but the town of San Gianni-Puli is reportedly, I couldn't find any evidence for this, but I didn't spend a lot of time looking for it. Specific evidence for this, but there's reportedly the location of the Roman town of Polyocum. Polyocum, as the name would suggest in Roman, was named after Apollo, the Roman god, and was believed to be the location of the Roman temple of Apollo, and is feared by locals to be the gate to the underworld. this particular location in Switzerland, even Roman times had a reputation, well, reportedly, even in Roman times, had a reputation for being a place of darkness and fear, if you want to say that. So these rumours, this stuff we're talking about, this is not anything new. When it comes to Switzerland, and like I said, Switzerland has apparently shown or been treated differently than everyone else by warring nations in Europe for a long time.
So we have a couple of guests in the background that are kind of distorting the Davy's point of view here. But now I have what was my question? So
well, listen, before you go into your question, right? Let's kick this off properly, right?
Okay.
So what I had down here was we were asked to discuss the possibility of evidence of occult activity in Switzerland. Specifically, we were asked to discuss the possibility of occult activity at the European CERN facility and the Gotthard Tunnel, which we've sort of discussed already. It should be noted that the evidence provided and what I had considered as inverted commas research has been verified as far as possible by internet research only, and the conclusions, assumptions, and any assertions that I make are purely my opinion, and you will have to make up your own mind. There's going to be nothing in here which is if there were hard and fast evidence out there, we wouldn't even be discussing this today. So you have to make up your own mind, as is the nature of inverted commas theories and conspiracy theories. You know, there's
also purely on a semantic point, says Mark, the skeptic. The occult, the definition of the occult is anything hidden.
Right.
Hidden from.
That's what it means, hidden from view, right?
So essentially, yeah, anything that is occult, by definition, nobody knows about because it is hidden from view. So if we know about it, then it's not occult.
Indeed.
Purely semantics. Sorry,
Indeed.
I'm a pedant.
It's semantics, but true nonetheless, because it is. If it wasn't occult and hidden from view, then we, as I said, we wouldn't be discussing it. There's going to be nothing here today. There's going to be nothing we're going to be able to provide that is going to give you evidence, inverted commas, empirical evidence. I mean, empirical evidence, as it's actually quoted as being, is based on, concerned with, or verifiable by observation or experience rather than theory or pure logic. So empirical evidence isn't hard and fast, inverted commas, scientific evidence, but scientific evidence itself is based on logic and theory without proofs. That's the premise of what we said we would discuss, sort of thing, you know. So I think before we went much further with regard to
what's he laughing at? Is he drawing a big dick or something?
No.
FTP.
He's drawing ET.
Nice.
Right. Okay. So anyway,
extra testicle.
CERN, right? Okay. Right. A lot of people make a big deal of the fact that it's called CERN, and a lot of BS about
666.
Well, it's not necessary, but a lot of people make out like CERN. The name CERN it happens to be sound a bit like the Irish horned god Cernunnos or Carnoon sort of thing. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about a wee bit of history so that people have actual facts about where we are and stuff. So anyway, CERN. So the name CERN is an acronym. It stands for the Council of European pour la Recherche Nucléaire, because after the Second World War and after the Yanks dropped the nuke on the Japs,
they deserved it.
Europeans, because it was actually German technology that they used, so the Europeans got together and created the Council. It's in French, that's why it stands for French 4 words, the Council of European Council of Nuclear Research, or in French it's Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, which is where CERN comes from. So the council was set up in the early 1950s, and it was set up to look into nuclear research across all of Europe. So it picked a certain few places, built a few places, and brought all the bigwigs from all the various European nations back to one place. So CERN has been doing what CERN does for a very long time. Indeed, in September 1954, as Europe was beginning to become a bit more Europe-y, the CERN mission was changed somewhat, and the name was changed. So it became the Provisional Council of CERN, was dissolved, and it was renamed as the European Organisation for Nuclear Research. And that's what it is today. It is actually called EONR, the European Organisation for Nuclear Research. However, the EONR was created in 1954, but it was decided that it would retain its name as CERN. The most vocal scientist on the council who wanted to retain the name of CERN was a guy called Werner Heisenberg. In 1932, won the Nobel Prize, and he was a chief physicist on the Nazi atomic bomb project from 1939 to 1945. So this guy, Werner Heisenberg, was very, very vocal that when Europe decided to change the name from CERN to EONR, he demanded that it be continued to be called CERN. And because of his input, to this day, it is called CERN, despite the fact that it's actually called the EONR. Complicated as that may sound, that's why it's called CERN.
It is quite complicated, yeah. But
I looked into whether or not Werner fucking Heisenberg, whether he was a meditator, Heisenberg.
Heisenberg.
Whether or not this guy had some sort of occult background. But I could find jack shit. I mean, what a bit right down here was.
Ultimately, if he was the father of this organization, being ultimately the academic and the research-based founder of this project, you would have imagined it's not unreasonable for him to want to keep the title, the name absolutely. Of the project. It's the same as, people call the Royal Victoria Group of Hospitals, the RVH. People don't adjust just because a sign says something different. It lives in the communal memory as well.
So are you saying that all those kneecapping victims don't give a shit about it being called the Royal Victoria Hospital? They still will accept treatment?
Well, it's not like they're going to say...
I'm just kidding. All those hoods that are against the Queen don't give a shit about getting treated in the Royal Victoria Hospital, which is quite ironic.
But when I looked into Werner Heisenberg, the worst I could find written about him, there was a lot of stuff written about him, but the worst I could find written about him was that whilst he was a brilliant physicist, many of his contemporaries believed him to be a duplicitous individual. And that's it.
A what individual?
A duplicitous individual. Oh, okay. And he's a bit of a...
two-faced fucker?
Sneaking fucker,
He'll play two sides against each other in order for him to come out on top.
But nowhere could I find that he danced in the woods with his novel fucking witches and other occult stuff like that.
Well, I mean, it's not the kind of thing you publicise.
So, interestingly, before we go on to the next bit, in the 1954, when Europe was becoming more Europe-y, and the CERN was changed to the EONR. Within 4 months of that happening, the infamous corporate-funded Bilderberg Group, which is the European version of the American... What do you call those guys?
Council for Foreign Relations?
No.
CFR?
What do you call the guys who get into the forest and worship the fucking owl? The president? No, what do you call them?
Bohemian Grove. They don't have a name for it, though.
Bohemian Grove. There's a name for the Bohemian Grove's where they go, but there's a name for the club they're all in. But anyway,
there is.
The European version of that is the Bilderberg Group, right?
Well, so the Yanks are involved in the Bilderberg Group.
Yeah, of course they are. But the Bilderberg was a European corporate-funded group set up within 4 months of CERN's name being changed to EONR. So Europe was really starting
to
take control of shit. And just so happens at the same time, Bilderberg Group appeared.
But again, the skeptical voice. You've got 9 years of the Marshall Plan, which basically was rebuilding Europe from the ground up because Europe had no money Britain was bankrupt, Europe or Germany was bankrupt, France was bankrupt. The Americans profited wildly from the war. They basically were seeking to make Europe not dependent on Russia for oil, hence the investment in nuclear power or nuclear research at the very least. Yeah. So you can see why not only the American state, but also basically private individuals, private corporations will be looking to invest, because after all, I mean, the Marshall Plan, how many trillions of dollars were pumped into that to basically rebuild, ultimately make Europe a reflection of American values and business principles.
Well, astoundingly, that there was at that time any sort of anti-Americanism, given the amount of money, as Mark said rightly, was being poured into Europe to keep the French and the Germans from fighting. The Bilderbergs' claimed aim in 1954, when they were kicked off, the Bilderbergs' claimed aim was Atlanticism, and this Atlanticism was an ideology, was designed to combat growing anti-Americanism in Western Europe, and was to promote relations between Western Europe and North America. And so the Bilderberg Group was very, very, very much a Western European American alliance to combat Americans for very, very clear in the fact that Russia and communism was on the far end of Europe. So Europe was very much the sort of ideological battleground.
But why was there anti-Americanism in Western Europe after the Second World War?
Well, remember, Western Europe's a big place. Western Europe, for example...
We're talking about Holland.
Poland felt that there was a lot of letdown, that Poland had been handed across to the Russians.
Yeah, that's true.
Western Europe includes Germany, who had just had their fucking arses kicked by
Ukraine,
the Americans, and rightly so.
Italy,
and so on and so forth. So there were parts of Western Europe that there was a growing resentment, and there was a concern that that growing resentment could be exploited by communism. There was potentially a right and proper motivation behind the creation of the Bilderberg Group. The Bilderberg Group has become much more, represents much more than that to us today. And I mean, what I've written here is that whilst this could be viewed through modern beer goggles as an attempt to progress a globalist agenda, it's more likely to be motivated by post-World War II anti-war sentiment, and the Bilderberg Group and corporatocracy is a whole other topic. But we're not here to discuss today. So I'll move quickly on beyond the Bilderberg Group.
A bloke walks into the doctor and says, "It's something very embarrassing to show you." And the doctor says, "I'm a doctor. You can show me. No judgment whatsoever." And so the bloke drops his trousers and bends over, and his arsehole is in tatters. It looks like a wheelie bin that's been set on fire. It's in bits. And the doctor says, "Holy shit, what happened to you?" And the bloke says, "I was in the zoo, I bent down to tie up my shoelace, and an elephant ran up and bucked me up the arse." And the doctor says, "Oh my God, but is an elephant's wab not long and thin?" And the bloke says, "Aye, but he fingered me first."
I'm going to keep that in the podcast.
What is the difference between a lentil and a chickpea?
I don't know.
You don't pay good money to have a lentil on your chest.
Okay, that's staying in the podcast.
Right, so we had talked about a bit of history behind CERN and where it is. What we were now going on to was the actual thing of the LHC, which everyone's talking about and being occulty, right?
When you say everybody, you.
Well. So anyway, LHC, this thing in the middle of Europe, right, is this fucking huge, 27 kilometers. Now just imagine this.
Now the LHC, yeah. If you can imagine.
Right, so the LHC is actually the Large Hadron Collider.
Yes.
It's one big experiment, and what it does is it takes particles from hydrogen, it busts up a cycle of hydrogen in a wee part of it, and then it fires those hydrogen particles, it strips the electrons and so on and so forth from the atoms, right? Strips the electrons from the fucking the particles of the atom,
and fucks what's left out into the from the super proton synchrotron, and it fires them out into the Large Hadron Collider, which is a 27-kilometer circle of super cool magnetized metal.
It's crazy.
It aims these streams of particles, because if you imagine it's not single particles, it's a stream of particles, and it aims them, it uses magnets to hold them, and because there's no, therefore, any friction or something like that these things achieve speeds of almost the speed of light, and they're flying like fucking Toyo, beating about the place, and they collide, they cross the streams. There's a stream coming this way and a stream going that way, and what they do is at certain places, I think it's 3 or 4 places on the ring, they cross the rings when they want to, and those individual places are experiments. So there's like one experiment called Alice, and there's a few other ones. But before we get to that, the details behind the LHC is that the Large Hadron Collider is a particle physics experiment run by CERN. It's located 175 meters underground at San Genipoli, close to Geneva, Switzerland, which we're already sort of talking about. It's the world's largest and most expensive machine. It's the world's largest and most expensive physics experiment. But it's not the only hadron collider. America has a number of hadron colliders.
Yeah, they just built one in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, they're all small ones for this big fucker. China reportedly is in the process of building one that's twice the size of this one. And there's reasons for that, which we'll get on to, but substances that these physics experiments can create stuff like antimatter. I mean, it's one of the most explosive, destructive substances known to man, and there's even more destructive, which we'll get on to. There's even more destructive substances than antimatter, which can be theoretically produced by hadron colliders. And I believe that the weapons race is part of what's going on here. But hey ho, we'll get on to that. So anyway, 27 kilometers in circumference. It's 12,000 tons in weight, containing as much iron as it would use to make 2 Eiffel Towers. The LHC has been built on the site of another already existing particle accelerator called, as we mentioned, the Super Proton Synchrotron. So the Super Proton Synchrotron was a small collider which was already there, and the CERN, or EONR, decided to make a bigger fucking one at great expense to the European public, might I add. And of course, keeping in mind that the physics behind these things is far from approved, and there was a great deal of risk involved that they just fucking well went ahead and fucked it and done anyway. That's why it's called research. Yeah, let's research fucking black hole in the middle of fucking Europe. See how that gets on. But anyway, so the people mix up CERN with the LHC. It's not, the LHC is not CERN. CERN owned the LHC, but CERN is an organisation run by the EU, and the LHC is the thing that everybody talks about and called CERN, but it's not. It's called the LHC. It's one of many pieces of kit at the Geneva site. There's lots of stuff at the Geneva site beyond CERN. CERN is the organisation that runs it. The site is so massive, it actually passes under a number of villages and parts of Geneva, the city of Geneva, and reports fund state that the site was picked due to seismic stability. So reports say that it was funded there because of seismic stability. Nothing to do with the fact of Apollyochum and the Temple of Apollo, although...
Well, there has never been an earthquake reported in Switzerland, to the best of my knowledge.
Because HAARP hasn't killed itself.
I mean, even until the last 5 years, Ireland had never had a recorded earthquake, to the best of my knowledge. And that was a record only equaled by Switzerland. Every other continent, every other...
Anyway.
Right, before we go any further with that horrendous topic of conversation, let's go on. So anyways, LHC is an amazing feat of modern man's engineering.
Oh, jeez, it's unbelievable.
And women's indeed.
Even though there was only,
and
there was only, I think, 2 women involved.
that we know of. The LHC provides microscopic levels of accuracy with it using a 27-kilometer ring comprising of superconducting dipole magnets cooled to minus 271 degrees C, which is 2 degrees C above absolute zero, using liquid helium. The magnetic field produced can reach levels of 100,000 times stronger than the planet Earth's magnetic field. And when the coil is cooled, the temperatures of the entire length of the ring can shrink by as much as 30 meters. So this ring can shrink by as much as 30 fucking meters, and they can still achieve micro fucking scopic results, which shows you what sort of a feat of engineering this fucking thing is. So it absolutely is, setting aside any bullshit, and this thing is a modern fucking wonder of the world. So the magnetic fields used to control and accelerate protons to virtually the speed of light. And to put that into perspective, these things could travel around the Earth 7.5 times per second. The LHC contains 2 particle beams, as I mentioned earlier on, moving in opposite directions at 4 points in the double circle. The circles can be converged, causing protons to collide at huge speed. The kinetic energy of those speeds is huge. At each of these 4 points, there is a cathedral-sized room with a huge 3D camera. Each of these are individual specific experiments with their own name, and these 4 points are known as Alice, Atlas, CMS, and LHCb, and the CMS stands for Compact Muon Solenoid. And the muon is a particular particle of its own that they're looking for specific reasons. Atlas is the largest of those 4 experiments, those 4 points. The accelerator works by releasing hydrogen gas from a tank and zapping it with electrical current, which rips the atoms apart and strips the electrons, leaving just protons, which are fired through the SPS, which is the superproton synchrotron mentioned earlier on, at the first stage of acceleration. So what they've taken is the old accelerator, and they now use that as just a warm-up for the big accelerator. The LHC has recently undergone an upgrade of the injectors, the linear accelerator, from LINAC 2 to LINAC 4, which will significantly increase the capacity of proton flow. So what they've basically done is doubled the amount of shit that they can fire around these things at light speed. Well, by now, they will have turned it on. But the last time we talked about this, I haven't actually turned it on yet. But by now, I'm sure they have turned it on. So they're probably running at these double speeds than the original ones. But I'm led to believe, according to the internet, if you want to believe it, that the fucking Chinese are in the process of making one twice that fucking size. So that's the LHC and that's CERN, and that's the history behind what we were said we would talk about. So what we actually said we would talk about is the accusations about occultism and uglyism and the creation of uglies like Fanjo. So where do these accusations actually come from? Mark, in terms of
David Icke?
Well, no, in terms of ugliness, basically the general public pointing their fingers at me, saying, some people might say he's handsome, I don't. I think he's devilishly ugly. But in terms of the occult and CERN and the Large Hadron Collider, Dave, tell me, where do these accusations come from?
Well, in actual fact, I have it written down here. So, what I have put down for the occult symbolism, right? Let's talk about occult symbolism. So let's look at some of the issues commonly brought up by concerned citizens like myself.
Well, concerned citizens on the internet. Let's visit his nose pickers and bedwetters.
Spotty nose pickers and bedwetters. So occult symbolism, let's get into occult symbolism right now. So symbolism is extremely important and prevalent in human occult religious practices because they try to hide in plain sight what is not seen with the eye. So symbols,
much like in all religions, well, with the exception of Islam, which allows no visual representation of any of their
no portraits or anything, right?
They're just beheadings.
No art. They don't allow art, right?
Yeah.
Islam. Bands art.
No visual representations or iconography.
Right.
So basically, the power of a symbol can be seen in Judaism, Christianity,
So let's talk about symbols then. As we said, so we've mentioned how symbols can be powerful. Symbols can be secretive. Symbols can be used to show something without actually showing something. To give a good example would be the Roman catacombs when the Christians were a banned religion, all persecuted. They used to draw wee fishes to let you know that this is the way of the fish. So
that's where the fish comes from. I thought it was from the fish coming from the sky.
There was a fish in loads, but it was used as a trail of fishes to get to the catacombs and also where the fish was.
Also, Jesus had just opened Chippy. It was a really, really well thought out ad campaign.
Yes. Right. Okay. So symbolism. The first and probably biggest deal of symbolism with statues is something that's right in your face, and usually they're for a particular reason. And so, for an organisation that is purely scientific, and for an organisation that is supposed to hold science at its core, that does hold science at its core. It has a statue outside its front door in the main building in San Genipoli, which is a statue of Shiva the Destroyer. Shiva the Destroyer was given to, the statue was awarded or given to CERN by the Indian, I have it written down somewhere that it was given to by the Indian Department of Atomic Energy. So on the 18th of July 2004, a high statue.
That's referring back to Robert Oppenheimer.
We're getting that.
Yeah, that's right. His famous speech.
Basically, when the first successful test of the A-bomb happened, he says, "I am destroyer of worlds."
But potentially there's an even closer a metaphor here with the statue itself in that. As I was saying, in June 2004, the Indian Department of Atomic Energy issued or gave CERN a 2-meter high statue of the Indian god, which is Shiva. Shiva is one of the primary of gods, which is the 3-in-1 Indian gods. There is Shiva, there is Brahma, and there is Vishnu. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. Shiva destroys the world and destroys the universe by carrying out the dance called the Nataraja, which is the dance of destruction. And she carries that symbolically. She carries that out within a ring. And of course, lots of people are making a big deal about occultism and are making a big deal about the fact that why would a scientific organization have Shiva the Destroyer dancing outside the offices of CERN? Well, I suppose if you were looking at it from a different perspective, the Destroyer dances within a ring and destroys to create. The primary of Indian religions are a circle in themselves. There is destruction, there is creation, there is preservation. So in order for Brahim to create, Shiva destroys, and in order for Vishnu to preserve, he needs Brahim to create. So it's an ongoing circle.
That's very much like most of so many major religions. If you look at Christianity, particularly Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, you've got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's a Holy Trinity. It's 3-in-1. You look at Celtic mythology and basically Celtic pagan religions. You have the Maiden,
the Hag, and the Crone of War.
Yeah. No, it's the
3 aspects of Danu, the goddess.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, there are many religions which have a triple aspect. But the point I'm making here, and where I'm going with this, is that the dance of destruction that Shiva does, setting aside the whole 3 aspects to the goddess, when you look at Shiva does the dance of destruction within a ring. When you understand the story of the dance of destruction, it's very easy to understand how this is considered an appropriate metaphor. The story of destruction of one thing to create another is what the Stern experiment is all about. It's equally easy to understand how people could draw the conclusion of this representation of a deity of destruction in front of a scientific building with a more sinister process. Why not Brahim? Why not the god of learning? Is the dance a pattern, formula? Patterns and formulas are what science and theory is all about. Are we attempting to learn that pattern and formula so we can attain the powers of God? There is so much of that metaphor that can go one way. It's a double-edged sword, basically. It can go one way or the other. I mean, at the end of the day, it could be just a simple. It could be construed as a simple metaphor for destruction and creation in a circle, which is what LHC is all about.
Occam's razor.
Occam's blazer.
Occam, the 14th century.
I like Occam's razor.
Yeah, basically the most simplistic and likely explanation is pretty much the one that it's going to be.
And what in this situation, what is that?
Well, basically, the Indian government said we have a deity, one of our triune of deities, who basically, is to do with destruction and works in the ring.
So, if the LHC, there's either two explanations. It's either to open the gates of hell, or it's just all symbolism. And
opening the gates of hell is a whole other different kettle of fish, because we're getting into the dimensions there. We'll talk about that in a minute too.
I don't think we have enough time.
We'll talk about what we're talking about first before we get there, because we're getting there. So the interesting, when we're told, Mark said Occam's razor, what's the most obvious thing? Well, the most obvious thing is what they fucking probably tell us it is. And there is an adjacent stone pillar to this statue, and it has an inscription written on it, and from, of course, the Indian Department of Atomics. It says, hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. And that was written by Fritjof Capra, a physicist. So what you could infer from what he's trying to say is that, if you were the sort of person who accepted or welcomed the ancient aliens theory, and you were to consider that potentially, because a lot of this stuff from ancient India, the likes of the flying ships and the gods of war and the skies, that ancient gods were in actual fact the ancient aliens, then potentially Shiva's dance of destruction is maybe some sort of physics experiment, some sort of, there's more to it than just a dance of destruction. You know what I mean? A dance is a pattern.
I keep thinking of Megadeth. Go on.
So anyway, the what this guy is actually saying is that they believe, or what he believes, he's talking for himself, that the dance of destruction portrays a metaphor which unifies ancient mythology. I'll quote his own words. It unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. And interestingly, religious art is one of the things we're about to get on to next, because this guy is saying that modern physics and the occult and witchcraft, opening dimensions for devils to come through, and this, it may well be that we're scientizing, if that's even a real word, but we're actually doing the things that we thought magic could do before, and it may well be that if that magic that we have inherited through society is based on science of ancient aliens or ancient beings that came on this world from years, hundreds of whatever years ago, then it's quite feasible that physics, our modern physics, could recreate those ancient things, and that magic, in inverted commas, has been a way of preserving an aspect of that knowledge throughout the time. It's all about patterns.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here with my innate skepticism. So, So, people have been trying to summon demons, open portals to hell for millennia, basically for hundreds of years, in fact thousands of years, because looking at various, when you look at the Cerney Abbas caves in France, where they have the horn god cave paintings. Yeah, the thing being, has anybody ever managed to summon a demon or open a portal to another world? No.
Lots of people would say
we don't know that. We don't know that.
Lots of people would say yes.
To be fair, we probably would know about it, in that there would be demons. Also, if
maybe they're unseen though.
You said yourself at the start that the occult is about hidden from
the unseen.
Sight, hidden from sight.
So why would people?
Demons aren't exactly going to fucking portray themselves in the open public if the local farmers are going to come up with their what they do to Frankenstein with their fucking pitchforks and torches and booting.
What about Ted Bundy? What about some guy that rapes a child or something? Is that? It could be.
Aliens, yet we're so keen to instruct us on the means and the methods for summoning these demons and opening the portals of hell. Why didn't they just do it, as opposed to, not doing it?
Maybe they did. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's what Nazi Germany was about. Maybe that's what ISIS are.
Personality. Well, the personality. But ultimately, I don't believe in demons. I believe in extraterrestrial life, but I don't combine those two to create a worldview. Also, in terms of physicists wanting to open a portal to another dimension, no, what physicists are trying to do generally is get another research grant to enable them to carry out the research. It's a hugely competitive field. They're living on the breadline. I mean, no physicist has ever. I mean, Stephen Hawking, possibly he wrote a best-selling book. He was slightly wealthier than anybody else. Most physicists are basically looking to enable their research to survive. They're not looking for portals to hell. What they're doing is they're submitting research proposals to peer-reviewed councils who basically look at the logistics of what the physicist is suggesting, the methods, the means, and the methodology, how much it's going to cost, and then they will basically say, okay, well, we will fund this on the basis of the likelihood of this actually proving tangible results. So in terms of doing good for mankind, potentially furthering knowledge, your chances of getting a research grant as a physicist are fucking very good. If you're going to do good stuff for humanity and further knowledge, you're going to get a grant. If, on the other hand, if you submit a proposal saying, I intend to open a portal to another dimension, therefore unleashing all the demons of hell, would you give me 250,000 francs? I don't think any peer-reviewed.
Well, Frank as a me.
Well, that may be the case. That I understand, of course, that money is behind most things, and
as somebody who has undergone countless fucking research proposals, submissions of research proposals, you yourself,
absolutely, yes.
But with academia, it's slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I would say is, and I completely agree with everything, absolutely, Mark's entirely right, as always. But when you're talking about a professor in a local university coming up with a potential idea for something, and potentially someone's going to make a few quid out of it, absolutely, I can understand that whole funding argument. But what we're talking about here is the EU spending fucking billions of pounds to come up with the most expensive and extraordinary piece of machinery that man has ever made. And there has to be some sort of driving factor behind that. And of course, as Mark has quite already said, it's undoubtedly fucking money. So where do they think that money's coming from? Well, it's got to be war. It's got to be, or is there something else? Considering the fact that we've only talked about the Gotten tunnel.
Our tunnel, yeah.
Our tunnel, yes. Considering the fact that we've talked about Angela Merkel and all being at that, if, and it's a big if you were to believe that there was some sort of fucking coven behind the leaders and the leadership of Europe, and the multi-dimensional universe is absolutely an accepted, one of the main, well, yes, accepted is the right way of putting it, I'm sure. It's a theory, but it's a theory which is accepted as being highly likely to be correct. As there are many other physics theories. I mean, there's entanglement and there's the string theory and all that stuff with quantum physics and what holds space together. But nevertheless, the multi-universe, the multi-dimensional universe is absolutely it comes from, I'm trying to remember, I remember reading this, the laws of thermodynamics,
probability.
It suggests that there is so much possibility in an infinite universe that anything is possible. That's the dimension. What you're thinking of is that there is a law, I think it's the third law of thermodynamics, which gives us the arrow of time, and it basically says that everything will decay. Everything will turn from one state to another, and that state will become an increasingly higher amount of entropy, so that it's something that is less ability to make it, less ways of making itself than it did before. That's a very complicated thing, but the bottom line is what I'm trying to say is that there is a widely accepted physics theory of I think it's quantum mechanics. I'm not entirely sure I'm right in saying that. I'm not a physicist myself, but the multi-dimensions and the multi-dimensional theory is absolutely one of the cornerstones currently of modern thinking. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I have it written down here somewhere that one of the heads of computing at CERN, one of the heads of SHEDS, is absolutely on record as having said that one of the things we may do is open a door to somewhere else, and we may see what comes through it. We may be able to push or send something from here through it. So opening a gate to another dimension is absolutely on the cards at CERN, and it's an openly accepted fact.
Yeah, I believe it.
Not understood by most, well, because most of us aren't fucking boffins. But back to the occult and symbols. If, as Mark mentioned earlier about conjuring a demon, if you remember all the stereotypical things that we've seen about demons being conjured, what's that about? It's about creating a gateway. And what does that gateway look like? We've all seen it in the old horror films, drawing a 5-pointed star on the ground, drawing a circle around it, fucking writing incantations around it, and all that stuff and all that. I'm not a magician.
That's a primitive version of what CERN is what you're saying.
Well, that's what it's a representation. You know what I mean? When you look at CERN, the CERN is an octagon within a circle, and within that circle, various energies are being passed along, through the shapes of the, so there are parallels that can be drawn. Is all I'm saying. I, as Mark quite rightly said, we couldn't possibly stand here and say one thing or another, but there are definite parallels in my mind to be drawn between what magic, people who profess to be practitioners of magic do to open a gateway, and what the physical scientists have looked at that. Well, maybe not looked at that, but they've come up with independently their own way of potentially opening a gateway to another dimension in the multiverse. And they're strikingly similar in many respects.
Well, because ultimately, and again, the skeptical voice coming through, that's because they're shapes.
Yeah.
So many, John Dee and all those magicians, in inverted commas, who came, well, John Dee was the most famous and potentially the most successful one. All they were mathematicians. They were looking at geometry. They were looking at shapes. They were looking at angles, degrees. They were looking at physically complex equations, and they were viewed with skepticism.
John Dee's a very interesting figure.
Yeah, absolutely.
The father of modern science, and yet steeped in mysticism.
What was John Dee's? What was his?
John Dee. I'd never even heard of him.
He's the magician for
Queen Elizabeth I.
Oh, really? I never heard of him. John Dee.
Father of modern science.
Yeah, he was a
Really?
spy. He was a spy. He was essentially her number one spy. What was his code name? Can you guess what John Dee's code name was?
Dun, dun, dun. Right.
Big Dick.
Let's count down. You've got 30 seconds. 30, 29, 28, 27.
Yes. The number one spy to Her Majesty.
It's not cocksucker.
John Dee's code name?
I'm trying to Google it, but it's like taking so long.
Cheater!
It was 007.
Fuck off, was it?
It was 007.
Really?
Why? That's why?
And that's why if you look at the opening ceremony of the 2012 London Olympics, that's why there's so much mysticism and occultism. It's right up there. It's above and beyond.
The opening Olympics? I have no idea. Look at that.
Seriously, for real?
The British Olympics?
Yeah.
I'm going to look at that now. You've got me looking.
It is unbelievable. The occult symbolism in the 2012 opening ceremony of the London Olympics is unbelievable.
Really?
And the fact that John Dee, if you look at John Dee's, the symbol he used as a signature, can you remember the two figures, the two icons?
Yes, a philosopher and a mystic, but he...
And he had a big stupid beard.
Science. Yes, that's him. The father of modern science,
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
A little bit.
Oh, his nose isn't big enough.
His nose isn't big enough, and his guns aren't.
His what?
His guns aren't.
Like mine.
Right. John Dee. Sorry.
That's cool. It's such a generic name, John Dee. It sounds like somebody that works in the Cumberland Farms down the street here. John Dee.
Cumberland Farms. What's Cumberland?
Cumberland Farms is like a Shell station, like a franchise gas station with food.
Pretty shit name for a gas station about Cumberland Farms. What do they call the farms around your area?
Well, they do that in America. They have honey farms and Cumberland Farms, and they're always the worst shitholes that
sound nice to the people. Wankers.
Well, no, the very good customer service here. But they have all these places like gas stations and stuff, and they always give them really nice names. Like the streets in America that are the most violent have the most peaceful names, like Pleasant Street or Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And you don't want to go there after 10 o'clock at night.
That's something.
Don't start them.
No, that's something. Apparently, if you look at the homicide rates on any street in the US called Martin Luther Jr.'s Avenue or Street or whatever,
right?
You're basically a spike in the homicide rates.
Well, we might get pulled off YouTube by the
Nobody will listen to your podcast.
So Bigfoot, I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh no! We're not going to fight.
Okay.
Just give a pause from the history lesson about CERN.
No, we. Mark was telling us the thing about the fucking Olympic thing about John Dee.
John Dee. His code name is 007.
Yeah.
If you look at the two
that's crazy.
Iconographic symbols for the London Olympics, which were called Mandeville and Wendell, one of them is the all-seeing eye, and the other one is basically, is it Venus? Is it the tripod Venus sort of symbol, which was another of the images which John Dee used. James Bond featured heavily in the. It was all full circle.
Why would I go watch that? I didn't know it. I didn't realize any of that.
YouTube, and also if you look at the Olympic Stadium, the spotlights, the floodlights, which illuminate the whole thing, are triangular with an oval illumination.
Yeah,
it's an all-seeing eye.
Why?
It is.
Right, I'm going to. That might be the subject of our next podcast, but let's move on.
Well, plus the Olympics are the arty symbol, right?
No.
Right?
How do you sport interlocking circles?
Yeah, but it's related to it somehow. I can't remember. But we're going to have to make a part 2 because I'm going to have to cut this.
But it's closest to related.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on. We were talking about occult symbolism. We've got as far as the statue. So we'll talk about the statue to death, okay? So the next occult symbolism to be concerned with CERN and LHC is the logo. Get your listeners to go on to Google and Google the logo for CERN. Check it out. I'm not going to say.
Oh yeah, I know it.
It is fucking 666.
Yeah, it is totally.
There are many different reasons that they give for that, like interpretive dance. They can tell you whatever they fucking want. You got to make up your own mind. It is very, very clear to me what it is. However, Mark quite rightly says that it could be considered to be the spirals coming off the picture of the explosion.
It's very obvious.
Only it could be considered to be the circle of CERN itself and the spikes that come off CERN to go to the various different parts of the experiments.
No.
There could be many different reasons for it is. The bottom line is that it's fucking sex.
The largest cathedral, they carry out
Atlas.
I can't even say it because of these cocktails.
I can say it. Does it cocks in his mouth that he said?
The cocktails.
Oh, sorry.
No. Do spectrographs, which is basically a breakdown of the imaging of the nuclei, the particles flying off when in the big cathedral-sized echo chamber, essentially. And what it looks like is the particles are flinging off at angles which look like sixes.
Yeah,
and
it just looks like 666. It's not actually 666. It just looks like 666. Yes, indeed, for now.
That's a very good. No, look up.
Yeah, it does look like 666.
Yeah.
It is 666.
But then look at the.
But maybe accidentally.
Particles on the spectrogram in the large Atlas Cathedral, as Dave says. Where did that image come from? Look at the images of the particles disintegrating. You will see essentially that same image, only done, naturally, as images, as particles disintegrate.
Maybe it's natural 666.
Have a look.
Accidental. There's Shiva, right?
Yeah. But you can see there the obvious metaphor with fucking CERN or LHC. Anyway, so that's 666 till death. So there is other iconography around the LHC, and as was mentioned earlier on, the black beside the statue of Shiva talks about religious art, and it talks about artistry. And LHC and CERN have not been behind the door when it comes to creating and welcoming artistic impressions of what they do. So there has been a number of films and dances produced by CERN about CERN. So the one of them, which created a bit of controversy, was one called Symmetry. And Symmetry is a film. It's a film of a dance. Which is all about CERN, and it's supposed to be, again, as we talked about in the Gotthard Tunnel, an interpretive dance based around things that go on in CERN. And the basic story is a guy called Lucas is a scientist, and he's looking for a breakthrough in his experiments, and he doesn't get that breakthrough until he becomes one with the experiment. And then he gets the breakthrough eventually. But when you actually look at what it is, I'll go into whatever it is. CERN, Symmetry. CERN created a video, one of a number of videos, that tell a story of a scientist in the medium of interpretive dance. In the hour-long video, a dark ghostly figure reaches out to the scientist and touches him. After that, the scientist goes on a journey of realization. Before it ends up in a salt flat in a circle around him. Again, circles around him. A gateways and symbolism. So anyway, a circle around him in the salt circles. A dark figure outside the circle, walking around outside the circle, trying to reach into the circle to get him. I just thought to communicate with them. Eventually, the scientist reaches out and pulls the dark figure into the circle with him, and it's all in the medium of dance. So what I had written was the dancer in the film was called Lucas, which again, occultism, symbolism, and just if you maybe means nothing, maybe it's just a coincidence. But Lucas, both in the film and in real life, the guy who did the dance was actually called Lucas. Lucas is a modern derivative of two words, and those words are light and of Luciania. So you could consider that the light is tempted by the darkness with knowledge. If you wanted to consider that as a potential message behind symmetry, but hey ho, who knows? It's only interpretive dance.
If you wanted to consider that, I, for one, am not swayed. I mean, until 2 years ago, Liverpool had...
He was the bringer of light.
He was the bringer of own goals.
Okay.
George Lucas has directed
Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars.
That tells
and
you
they are battles between...
Different Lucas. It's not the sea. Different Lucas.
They are based on basically messianic fables. Yeah, the Star Wars films, good versus evil. Yeah, paternity struggles, father issues, Oedipal complex, fucking your sister.
So where do the accusations come from with regard to CERN and the LHC? There are other things that's available. Like for example, there is an online video which was produced a while ago, reportedly recorded by somebody hiding in one of the buildings, and which showed 12 black-robed people carrying out a human sacrifice.
Were they black people wearing robes, or were they people wearing black robes?
They were black-robed people, as in the robes were black. Carrying out a human sacrifice in front of the statue at CERN. It has been shown to be a real video, i.e. it was at the correct location, but it remains unproven as to whether or not the ritual was real or whether it was just kids carrying a prank. Pictures?
No, I would doubt that because there was actually the revelation that Professor Brian Cox, who was involved in the creation of CERN, apparently he was...
Cox? Say that again?
Brian Cox? He was the keyboard player in
Fish the Yeah, I know that, but what
Fish can only get battered.
Yeah, he was
involved. He wasn't as involved as Cornell was.
No, he was involved in the... He's a world-leading physicist.
He's a cock. I'm going to fucking check that out.
Yeah, and apparently...
I don't like his face. He annoys me.
He looks quite similar to you. So I can see why.
Yeah, he'd fuck him.
Really?
But, no. Brian Cox, apparently, I wouldn't think there were school kids involved in having pranks in CERN. Because apparently, Brian Cox was walking through the tunnels, eating his packed lunch, spilled a bit of his lunch onto one of the fucking mega thermocrude rails, and ultimately it had to be closed off for 2 weeks because he dropped a small amount of food in the tunnel because it was all hermetically sealed. So I would doubt that they would let school kids in.
No, this was outside. This was in the place. This was outside. This was apparently in front of the statue of Shiva, which is outside the front door. So there were 12 kids in robes. Stabbed a wee girl.
The black kids were...
they were black-robed kids, not black-robed kids. They were black-robed kids.
Well, if we carry it out,
this is where the apostrophe. This is where the apostrophe is really useful.
If they carried a number of stabbing, I'm sure we can read through
the right. Let's move on then. So also, pictures were taken by, reportedly, and I mean the pictures are online for anyone to see, but pictures were taken by a group of Portuguese music students from the Sant Cecilia Music Academy. See how fucking well I researched this. Music students from the Santa Cecilia Music Academy showing multiple transparent panels containing arcane texts. So if you imagine a panel about the size of an 8x4 sheet of plywood, right? These things are sitting in one of the experiments where these students were, and they're all sitting lined up. And if you imagine all of the languages, ancient languages that are available, including ancient Indian Sanskrit, which was widely considered the language of the gods to Indians, which are welcoming messages. So if these photos were true, and if those things existed, why the fuck would CERN have welcoming messages written on big tabloid fucking bits of poster ready to show some cunt who comes through the fucking dimensions? What the fuck's that about? Or it's a hoax.
Alternatively, it could be welcome to CERN. We'd like you to enjoy your visit.
It's Sanskrit. The gods, they come along, welcome to CERN.
The fucking the gift shop is to your left.
Look, Sanskrit is considered to be the language of gods and can only be read by Hindu scholars and Vedas of the Venusians. Whilst these pictures went viral, they remain unproven.
So they weren't expecting Hindus. That would be racist to not expect Hindus.
You're terrible, man. No. So
they probably have fucking intersex bugs.
So there are pictures of reportedly unproven pictures of welcoming messages to whatever's coming through.
Yeah, as in tourists.
So the last thing I have here is astounding photographs exist online of a lightning storm that appeared in the skies above CERN on the day CERN was carrying out an experiment called Awake. So on the 24th of the 6th, 2016, not 1916, 1916, on the 24th of June, 2016, CERN was carrying out an experiment which nobody knows what it was. All they know is that it's on their records. They hold records of what it is they're doing and what days. They were carrying out an experiment which was called Awake. And on that day, while they were carrying that experiment, astounding photographs were taken of a huge lightning storm which appeared above the skies directly above CERN. That's it. That's all I've got to say. So, well, what else have we got? We mentioned already about San Genipoli being the place of Apollyon and the reported gate to the underworld from Roman times. Strange stories about CERN. So there was a strange story about a Dr. Edward Mantle who was conducting research into hidden codes and movements of neutrinos from the north to south magnetic poles. He shut himself in his office, burned all his research, and wiped his computer except for one text file, and was found dead from self-inflicted gun wounds on the 13th of July 2016. So
not the 12th? Here, listen. We're going to have to do a part 2 because...
We're nearly done. We're nearly done.
Are we?
3 pages left here, so we'll quickly run through them, right?
Okay. I'll tell you a little story quickly before you go on. I work for a scientist, and this scientist is called Robert Lazar. I do. You know Robert Lazar. He worked on Dolly the sheep, and he's working on a cure for blindness. He works in Worcester here, and he's very high profile. And he has his own island here in Clinton. There's like a little like island here in Clinton, and he lives on it. Stephen Hawking went to visit him and stuff. But I was going to dress the place up. He had his own indoor pool with tropical plants and stuff. So I went to his house and did all this plastering.
So wait. So we'll talk about Dr. Edward Mantle and his weird fucking shenanigans. Then there is the Nostradamus prophecy. Nostradamus' prophecy and his quatrains. And Nostradamus has, as we're well aware, at times been very accurate with some of the self-fulfilling prophecies. I'm going to quote one of the parts of Nostradamus' quatrains.
Either they are self-fulfilling prophecies, or else Nostradamus is a very successful prophet. They can't be both simultaneously, because if they're self-fulfilling prophecies, then essentially,
Indeed.
Sorry, semantics.
So this may well be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Who knows? But this is what he said. Leave Geneva, every last one of you. Saturn will be converted from gold to iron. Rapaz will exterminate all who oppose him. Before the coming, the skies will show the signs. So Saturn, as is commonly known, the North Pole of Saturn has some really, really weird geometrical shit going on. So, for example, if you look at some of the shit on the internet, there is a huge hexagon in the cloud formations now. How that is created, nobody knows, because swirling of planets that are circulating. Hexagons shouldn't exist, but there is a cloud formation at the top of Saturn, which is a hexagon. Sort of thing,
Would that
would
that be similar to the hexagons which exist in the Giant's Causeway, which are a completely uniform shape?
That's a completely different kettle of fish. No. Like you're talking about a crystalline structure being created. What got a gas giant planet with over hundreds of thousands of miles wide, huge hexagons.
Ultimately, uniform shapes created by random processes.
Well, that's possible. That, of course, is possible, but it is interesting that the ancient times, where the wandering stars were considered as gods by our predecessors, that Mars was considered to be the god of war and Saturn was considered to be Satan. So I don't know whether or not that has anything to do with it, but I do know that it is a fact that Nostradamus has said those words. And whether or not it turns out to be an accurate prophecy of his, whether it turns out to be a load of bullshit, or whether or not it turns out to be some sort of weird self-fulfilling prophecy that we assume meant that, the fact of the matter is what he said was, leave Geneva, every last one of you. Saturn will be converted from gold to iron. Rapaz, R-A-Y-P-Z, don't know what that. It's obviously somebody's name, or referring to somebody's name.
Is that called Ethel?
Will exterminate all. Yeah, it is. Yeah, will exterminate all who oppose him. Before the coming of the sky will show signs. So remember that Nostradamus talked about Hitler as Hitler.
Yeah, Hitler. Yeah, that's right.
You hear about someone called Rapaz or something called Rapaz that will exterminate everyone in Geneva. So that may be a little bit of shit, but it's there, and it's worth thinking about. So, before we go any further, I was going to tell you what it was supposed to have said in Dr. Mantle's last words in his final text on his computer. I'm not going to bore you that because it's short time. So what's the problem? We're getting now towards the end. The main accusation about occult activity in CERN is they're lifting the veil. They're opening a portal to a doorway to another dimension, an evil dimension. The Entimanake, the Dwakarmati, the opening of the Apsu, or the Stairway to Heaven. Entimanake is the gateway to hell from Babylon stories. The Dwakarmati is the gateway to heaven from Hindu stories. The opening of the Apsu is the gateway to where the gods came from in Sumerian texts. So the whole thing about CERN is about an opening of a portal, and that is absolutely something that has been openly said by scientists. As we've mentioned earlier on, there's no point going over old stuff. So can this be done? Is it possible? Is it a load of bullshit? Are we all worrying about fuck all? Is there such a thing as an opening to another dimension? Is that other dimension an opening to hell? Is it an opening to heaven? Is it just a fucking opening to another
parallel universe?
Version of us? Who knows? But they don't know, but they're trying to open a gate to it, or they're possibly opening a gate to it. So theoretically, yes, it can be done. Theoretically. Scientists openly admit this fact and desire it. Of course, we don't know what that means, and we have no idea what would be in there. Maybe it's heaven, maybe it's hell, maybe it's nothing at all. Theoretically, the issue isn't the other dimension, but whether or not that other dimension is hell and will be open the abyss. So theoretically, there are other dimensions. Theoretically, these are scientists, not me saying this. This is not a fact. Theoretically, it is absolutely possible. The issue is, and the occult issue is, whether or not that other dimension is or isn't hell, or isn't nothing at all, or isn't Michelin Court. Interesting fact: the new Great Arc is the Champs-Élysées in Paris, is a representation of the fifth dimension. So as you look down the big main road of Paris from the I'm trying to remember the name of the French palace, which looks like Champs-Élysées, Versailles. And then there's you look down Champs-Élysées, and then there's the Arc de Triomphe, and Paris is regenerating. So Paris is building new parts to it. So further on down that main street from the Arc de Triomphe, they've now built a new arc sort of thing for the next generation sort of thing. So the French government brought in another artist and our architect, and they have created another arc. And what this is the Great Arc, as they're calling it. And it's at the far end of the Champs-Élysées. And it is, as I mentioned, a representation of the fifth dimension from the artist called Spreckelsen after a competition by President Mitterrand. So Paris is creating art dedicated to other dimensions already.
Well, sure, the Americans are currently carrying out specifically designed research to see to basically quantify the proof of alternative dimensions. What they do is they fire protons at a very, very thick wall. If any protons are actually able to permeate the wall, because they physically and in terms of physics, they should not be able to penetrate the wall. But if they're able to be detected on the other side of that wall, it's to be seen as proof of alternative dimensions, in which alternative dimensions have been able to impinge on this current one, enabling those protons to permeate the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Just carrying out that research.
And that's absolutely what CERN is doing, or what they claim to be potentially doing, or potentially able to do, is a better way of putting it. So
asking why they're doing it.
Well, that's the issue behind it.
Why did they send somebody to the moon? We knew the moon was there.
Well, science history is potted with well-meaning scientists, funded by not very well-meaning people, who use that scientific research for their own means. And the wee scientists who didn't mean for shit that. Robert Oppenheimer didn't mean to become the destroyer of worlds, but he fucking well did.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's a religion to them, isn't it? It's their religion, and they will do anything.
Where religion comes into it.
It's discovery.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole concept.
With research, doesn't matter whether it's in the humanities, whether it's in the sciences, whether it's in biology, physics, or chemistry. If you are an academic seeking to pursue your goal of finding out, ultimately you need to go where people haven't been before.
Yeah.
Sometimes that'll end up in dreading and shit.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of what we're talking about. I mean, as the plaque outside CERN says, where a physicist is drawing clear parallels, and obvious parallels between art, religion, and physics. That's what a cult is about. Where they're openly saying they want to draw, or they have the ability to potentially open a gate to another dimension, or open a gateway to something. They're not sure what it is. It's all very theoretical at the minute. But that's the point of what we're saying about it. At the end of the day, we're concerned that other dimension is maybe a fucking black hole going to kill us all. We're concerned
They still have to do it, though, if they're scientists. It's their religion.
Keeping in mind what our religious texts have said, I mean, if you look here, what I put here is that the abyss that what we're talking about is a concern about the opening of the abyss. The abyss is nothing more than a religious concept or construct. We don't know if it exists or not. The Word of God tells us it exists if you're a Christian. I don't know about other Bibles and other religious things, but it is nevertheless a religious concept or construct. So let's look at the religious prophecy that they believe it will invoke. Revelation 9-10 says, the fifth angel sounded the trumpet, and I saw a star had fallen from heaven. The star was given the keys to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like a gigantic furnace. The sun and the sky were darkened from the smoke of the abyss. It goes on to talk about a swarm of deadly locusts. Generally, the Bible talks about a star that is translated as an angel, and that angel had fallen from heaven. The locusts had a king over them, and that the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew was Abaddon, and the Greek is Apollyon. I've already talked about how potentially this place was built across the temple of Apollyon. I'm not saying any of this is true.
Also,
we have a text.
You don't get locusts in Switzerland.
Oh, it's true. Because
You might
you
might get daddy long legs. What do they call daddy long legs in America?
Daddy long legs.
Oh, right.
Yeah, same thing.
Right, nearly there. Then, so, are there alternative factual reasons to be worried? Now, let's get away from the bullshit about Apollyon and all that carry on. So, scientists are rarely evil, reclusive geniuses that Hollywood portrays, like Dr. Franken, no sense. If you like, rather well-meaning people focused on science and the good of mankind. However, their research is often used for purposes that originally intended by backers, e.g. the arms industry. Now I am become deaf, the destroyer of words, was a quotation of Robert Oppenheimer, who described how he felt after successful detonation of the world's first nuclear device. This is a quote that not well known. Not well.
He was haunted by that. He was haunted. I remember that quote.
Well known is that what Robert Oppenheimer said was an actual fact. A quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which is a Hindu text
I've heard it.
written in the language of the gods, Sanskrit. So Robert Oppenheimer is obviously a very intelligent bloke, like our Marcus Benedictus here, and Robert Oppenheimer isn't just coming up with something that he's quoting the language of the gods when he says, "I've become the destroyer of words."
Sounds good. It's what Hindus.
But remember, we're talking about facts here. Facts.
But that's sure.
We're talking about facts here. So let's get into facts.
Hindus do their language is the language of the gods. We speak in Northern Ireland. Our language is the language of the gods.
Party hill.
I mean.
So let's get into facts. More practical, obvious dangers of the Large Hadron Collider presented are the destructive force of some of the substances they're theoretically capable of creating and have already created. So what we're saying here is that scientists are rarely Dr. Frankensteins. They're people who think they're doing the right thing. But in this case, there is, as I've mentioned before, fucking astounding amounts of public money have been spent by the EU creating the Large Hadron Collider. Now, setting all the carry on about a cult, setting all the conspiracy theory aside, what's the facts that we know about what they're doing there, and what might those facts mean? So, obviously, let's look at what we know as being one of the reasons behind Robin Oppenheimer's fucking funding was the creation of nuclear devices. So what are they doing that could be created, that could be as destructive? So, more practical, obvious dangers, as I mentioned, of the Large Hadron Collider, and the things that they have already created. So, they have already created antimatter, a sci-fi sounding material which is exactly the same as normal matter in every respect, except that it holds the opposite electrical charge. If antimatter were to meet up with the same type of matter, they will cancel each other out, leaving only the energy holding them together. It is estimated that 0.25 of a gram of antimatter and matter were to yield an explosion in the region of 5 kilotons. That's 1/3 the size of Hiroshima Fat Boy. So a quarter of a gram of antimatter, and they're making this stuff. A quarter of a gram of antimatter, if it was collided with a quarter of a gram of similar matter, will produce 1/3 of the size of the explosion of Hiroshima without the radiation. Now, do you think for 1 second that the warmongers in the various super states that exist today aren't pricking their ears up listening to that?
Oh, for sure.
That's a fact.
That is something that is, that's something, because again, that's why the neutron bomb was seen as the future of warfare, because essentially it would be able to wipe clean the populace of an area without the radiation, without the fallout, without the place being a dead zone. So, for somebody who's been skeptical thus far, hearing that information would let me.
Okay, so
make me appreciate why the military industrial complex would be quite keen.
Okay, so that's antimatter. Next part, strangelets. The field of quantum physics is producing more and more particles every day. They're finding more and more building blocks of nature, and as part of those building blocks, they're also finding other things. So they've called these things strangelets. I don't know much about them, but I've researched them on the internet.
Dave calls them dingleberries.
Dingleberries. Let's call them dingleberries, because it probably means about as much to me. But anyway, strangelets, theorized as the most destructive, explosive, unstable particles in the universe. They are created in the gluon-muon plasma, created in the aftermath of a particle destruction. This is exactly the type of plasma created in the Alice experiment. So one of the 4 experiments we talked about that are happening in the LHC, one with Atlas and the CMB, one of them is called Alice. Alice does a particular type of experiment which results in a gluon-muon plasma. And gluons and muons are particular particles. So gluon-muon plasma, right? This plasma has in it these things called strangelets. I don't ask you much more about it than that. But the bottom line is that these strangelets, which are being created in the Alice experiment, are considered to theorize, and this is physics words, not mine, theorized as the most destructive and explosive, unstable particles in the fucking universe. Now, if you think that someone in the arms department in the Pentagon, or the what do you call the Russian version of the Pentagon, the red square dudes, the Kremlin.
Kremlin, yeah.
Aren't pricking up their ears and listening, you're fucking mad. Now that's a fact. It's not me telling. It's not me bullshitting about religion. That's a fucking fact. So, what else could be created by LA?
Well, it's like Stranger Things, the show.
Well, it's called Stranger.
They're all.
I don't know the things that it's strange.
But you've seen the Stranger Things show, where the Russians and the Americans are trying to acquire this technology to the different dimensions. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they would do.
Yeah.
It's totally true.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably...
The Russians opened up a gate and brought something through in America.
It's a metaphor for what's actually happening, I think. I think that all these shows, like The Matrix, Stranger Things, Star Trek, are just like prepping us for what's to come. I've always thought that.
Absolutely.
You know? Because, like...
To an extent, I mean, there is the theory that the amount of disinformation with regard to UFOs is basically there to desensitize. It's there as smoke and mirrors. It's there.
Right.
Yeah. You're hiding in plain sight. In the same way, where's the best place to hide a book? In a library. Where's the best place to hide a reputable UFO sighting? In amongst a whole host of completely unbelievable
barmy stuff.
Yeah.
But yet, when you look at UFO sightings and the hundreds of thousands, some of it's like by aircraft pilots, by fighter pilots by some of the top.
It's the same with Bigfoot.
Society. How could they consider all of that to be bullshit? But anyway, we're not talking about that. We'll not digress for a short time. So anyway, what are the factual reasons to be concerned? So the next one beyond strange bits was black holes. Stephen Hawking himself theorized that the creation of the Higgs boson particle, which they absolutely have done, they claim. So Stephen Hawking theorized that the creation of a Higgs boson particle could lead to the formation of a devastating black hole as these particle collisions rip a hole in the space-time continuum. Physicists openly admit that the creation of infinitesimal black holes during the particle collisions is a distinct possibility. I don't know whether that worries you. It worries me.
Well, we won't know about it if it happens, right? It'll just be like a light switch going off.
It take up to 5 months. Something about. I remember as I was looking into this, there was a guy, a German fucking dweeb, who was on German TV, but he was a certain physicist, and they said to him, and this guy was like a complete dweeb, going, well, it could take up to 5 months. As if that's a fucking good thing.
Oh, really?
Anyway. So, other reasons to be concerned: unknown particles. The certain guys know that there are particles in the standard model of which we are aware. So physics has a standard model of gluons and muons and particles and so on and so forth. I've looked at it when I was online. It's interesting. You should look at it yourself. But anyway, so they know that there are certain particles that exist and they're looking for them as they're blowing shit up in the LHC. But that doesn't mean that they know everything. That doesn't mean that they know everything that they're creating. Because they are creating and blowing these things up. They're creating things that didn't exist. They're creating mass that didn't exist in one form or another. That's part of the problem. So anyway, certain guys know that there are particles in the standard model which we are aware of, and that they have taken account of trapping them in the collider. That's what they do in this 3D thing. They trap them as sparks and they come out in spirals or like they trap them and take photographs of them. However, they also openly admit that they are hoping to find new particles, ones which they know nothing of. Take, for example, a neutrino, which flies through normal matter. If you take the potential for destruction that Hawking attributed to the Higgs boson, then who's to say that they will not discover a new destructive unstable particle that they cannot contain or control? They're messing with stuff that they openly admit they don't know what the details are. Let's bust it up and have a look at what's inside. Sure. Fuck. It's a bit cavalier for my liking. So conclusion.
But again, they're working within very strict confines. I mean, that's the way those researchers, they don't be cavalier. They can't be gung-ho with their research. Basically, each research proposal and each experiment has to be fucking rubber stamped, looked at by, supervisors, research, peer reviewed.
Absolutely. I get all that.
You can't just go,
all right, sir, I want to create a black hole, please. I'll go for it, lad. They've found the Higgs boson. They claim they have found Higgs boson, so they have already carried out experiments that Stephen Hawking has claimed, regardless of the fact that they may well have had the best fucking scientists in the world looking at them. Stephen Hawking has theorized that could have created black holes that could potentially have been massively destructive. So whilst they have wonderful safety measures, they're being cavalier with your and my safety.
Well, yourself, health and safety. There's a baseline of what is safe, and then there's the impossible and the unknown.
That's true. And I mean, I suppose from a personal perspective, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. So there's always a few other multi-dimensions to it,
Yeah.
So the conclusions that I drew from everything that we've looked at here up to now, and there's only two of them really, sort of thing. So this is really the end of where we got to after all of this.
Screenell's laughing. He doesn't like your
balls. Fucking ice tickles the guy.
I know.
We're not mates anymore. True.
So as Mark said right at the very, very start, and sort of got at the word occult raises many preconceptions of evil and the devil. However, This is a common misconception, as the word occult means hidden. Therefore, when we are searching for the unknown or hidden,
I kind of like pull the rug from under your feet with your big finale.
Yeah, right at the very, very fucking start. Yeah,
that's because you're ugly.
This is the only part. We haven't even started on Epstein and Sable.
It could be considered.
That's part 2. Okay, that's next month.
It could be considered hard to separate science from occult, and that's actually what we were talking about with John Dee. Right, okay. So as I was saying, right, the word occult means fucking hidden stuff. So therefore, we're searching for unknown or hidden things, and it could be construed as hard to separate science from the occult. And we talked about John Dee earlier on, and how John Dee's beginning of science began in the occult.
But no. Sorry, I respectfully disagree. You're searching for hidden things. Well, of course you're searching for hidden things. Otherwise, yeah, why would you be searching for them? Because you know where they are.
Of course.
John Dee, I am firmly of the belief that he was a mathematician and an astronomer.
He was a mystic.
Who basically was interpreted. Yeah, he dressed his findings up in mysticism because there simply wasn't the terminology. To appreciate.
And he was widely accepted. The way he went about trying to find the truth of the mysticism that he was doing.
That was pre-enlightenment.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree with you. But so he was a mysticist, or whatever you want to call it.
A mystic.
Mystic.
Moving towards science, but in dabbling in the occultism and the mysticism that he was absolutely part of. Because that was his job for the Queen, he established the basic rules for what we know as science today. Empirical evidence based on factual stuff. John Dee was absolutely the man who was both the mystic and the scientist. And he began he set down the basic rules for what science and the evidence that required for science is today. He was both things.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So he was considered to be hard to be separate science from the occult in the days.
Yeah, because basically, if you don't have the vocabulary to explain why...
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying why, I just said it was a fact.
Yeah. You know, converting on heresy.
Yeah.
Manichaean heresy, all the basic heresies are basically because people understood stuff that
differently,
and the rest of the world couldn't. Yeah, they didn't have the understanding to accept. Yeah, the Earth rotates around the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was John Dee, the mystic for the British Crown, who set down the rules for how science moved forward after that. He said, so if you're talking about the heliocentric Earth or heliocentric solar system, he set down that you have to prove this and prove that and prove the other. That's how John Dee worked. And it was eventually through the application of what John Dee put in place that we proved beyond doubt the fact that there was a heliocentric Earth just by the observation of the stars and by writing down what you observed and what that meant.
Yeah.
So then, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly. But at that time, there was no difference between science and occult until. So therefore, science. It is absolutely true to say that science has its roots in the occult, and the two are hard to split apart.
That is alchemists. An alchemist is a scientist. Yeah. Well, scientist.
He was.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is simply. Yeah, that's such a semantic. Oh, you're worse than me.
No. I never heard of the fucking festival.
Yeah. No.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, all scientists are occultists. All scientists are occultists.
Exactly what we're saying, Mark. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, because they're looking into the unknown and they're trying to find the unknown.
The hidden.
The difference being is by using the word occult, you're applying something sinister to it. If that's the case, my father was one of the most.
He was
one of the most high-ranking occultists
No, that's not true. Your dad wasn't a scientist. He was a medical...
Into diseases of the hypothalamus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
And he was looking for hidden diseases. Not only that, but with the pituitary gland.
No, but you see,
Yeah,
but you're missing the argument of Isaac Newton.
Guys, I gotta wrap it up.
Right. We're going to wrap it up now. We're in the process of wrapping it up, and I'm just going to say to Mark that Isaac Newton said that if I see further than anyone else, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. It's true to say that modern scientists do have the ability to look into stuff from a scientific perspective, but that entire bloodline, when you go back through the whole how that developed and evolved, came back to, it's accepted widely, came back to people like, if not directly to, John Dee, who was steeped in mysticism, started to look beyond mysticism and said, okay, if I believe that 2 fucking frogs stop a wart, why is that? And that's all I'm saying. So.
Speaking of Isaac Newton,
Okay.
Isaac Newton had a theory. He called it gravity, and every time he had a shit, he ate it for his teeth.
So as we were saying, where was it? Oh yes. It's a matter of published fact that CERN are at least theoretically capable of opening the doorway to other dimensions, and these dimensions exist, and that these dimensions exist. The multiverse is theoretical, yes. However, the question of what lies on the other side leaves the arcane possibilities open. But that leads us back to, as we've just said, where we don't know what the truth is, we tend to assign
Sinister
motives or religious things to the things that we don't know until we know what they are. So that is completely true, but who knows what lies in front of us. Therefore, due to a lack of knowledge of what is in these dimensions, we cannot say with any assurity that the theoretical doorway would be a stairway to heaven or a gateway to hell. Therefore, I believe no one can prove or disprove the suggestion that we are trying to open the abyss, unless CERN is not telling us something.
And that will be part 2.
One more to go. How long?
Okay. I'm just getting shit here.
One more conclusion. The LHC is known as the atom smasher, which is really a misnomer. It isn't an atom smasher. The work of the LHC is not destruction, rather than creation. It is, in essence, firing particles at each other at an astronomical speed, creating infinitesimally small black holes and tears in space. From these tiny explosions, they have shown that new matter is created, matter that it is believed does not exist in the rest of the universe and has not existed since the Big Bang. Some would compare that to alchemy. The comparison of Shiva's Nataraja is obvious, the dance of destruction. So the bottom line is what I'm saying here, is that whilst there is lots and lots and lots to talk about, and no one can say truthfully one way or the other, but I can't find anywhere evidence that Satan is being produced, but I can find evidence that doorways are trying to be opened. Where those doorways lead, who knows?
Perfect. And that is the end of part 1 of this podcast, because I want to get into a lot more stuff, and we will schedule something in like a few weeks or so about the other goings on in the earth, Brexit, Epstein, the Amazon fires and stuff like that.
About fucking Brexit, the traitors in Parliament.
Yeah, I know. That's a different conversation. We will get into that, but for now, I have to sign off and attend to my lovely daughter and wife. And thank you guys for joining me. And it was a great chat.
sun and the secrets of the moon.